Finally, it's time for a change in the format with Ryzeal. Hey guys, this is Tombox, and today I'm gonna give you guys my Ryzeal deck profile fresh out of the packs. I'll also demo a couple of combos with this deck, and more importantly, share with you guys the fundamentals of comboing with this deck and the thought process that goes behind executing one of these combos. But if you're more into learning how to beat Ryzeal, don't worry, I got you covered in the previous video. Enough yapping. If this isn't your first time here, if you guys can give me a like, hit subscribe, and ding that notification bell, I'd really appreciate that. And let's go. Into the main deck, we have 3 Ice Ryzeal, 3 X Ryzeal, 3 Sword Ryzeal, and 1 Node Ryzeal. So 10 monsters total within the Ryzeal package. Ice Ryzeal is the diva of the deck, X Ryzeal is the Stratos, or Stratos 1, and then Sword Ryzeal is technically Stratos number 2, and then we have Node Ryzeal, which is the Wolf Bark. So what do? Ice Ryzeal summons out a Ryzeal from the deck on normal summon. X Ryzeal can special summon itself. Both of these search on summon. X searches for the Fire Thunder, and Sword searches for the Light Pyro, and Node Ryzeal summons back from the graveyard, but that monster is negated. Now, they all have a special summon condition, and they're all slightly different from each other, but none of them start a chain. So, Ice Ryzeal sending a card from hand or field to the graveyard to summon itself out, but once you use these self-summoning conditions that are like Cyber Dragon-esque, they don't start change. What happens is that you lock yourself into rank 4 Xyz monster. Okay, so that's one big lock. X Ryzeal can provide you with a search, but there's also a condition that you can't control anything that isn't a rank 4 level 4. So this one is kind of a bit more restricted to get that search, but this is the most free summon, which is why it's probably the priciest one of them all. Sword Ryzeal, you just have to have a Ryzeal on the field or in the graveyard, and Node Ryzeal, you just need an Xyz on the field or in the graveyard, and you get that free special summon. All right. So for hand traps, I have 3 Ash, 3 Imperm, 3 Furloss, 2 Drone Lockbird, 1 Nibiru, 2 Ogres, and 1 Effect Veiler. The ratio seems a little bit weird for the 15 hand traps. That's because I'm playing Crossout Designator, so I just need a little bit of extra reach and minimize on the ones I don't want to see too many names of. And also Nibiru, for me, is searchable in this deck, so it kind of works out even with just 1. Now, as for the spells in the 1 trap, we have 3 Bonfire, because you can search for Ice Ryzeal and X Ryzeal. We have Cross Ryzeal and Plugin. I almost want to play more Plugin, and hear me out on this, because Plugin helps you kind of revive your detonator, especially when your opponent forces you to destroy it yourself, because they're playing Book of Eclipse, you destroy it yourself, and then you can play Plugin to revive it, attach a material just from Plugin's effect, and also attach a material from the detonator effect alone. So that's why I kind of want to do it. Of course, Cross here is your craziest speed negation when it comes to like monster effects. Also provides you with a draw too, but keep in mind the restriction, you can't double up on names. So if you open with this and somehow your dual drive still gets negated, you're gonna have to get rid of it first before you make another one, which is where the Ice Ryzeal and the Node Ryzeal comes in to help you clear out those names. All right. And so then we have Desires. I'll play 2 Desires. You don't start with this card. You always play it at the end, because if you start with it, your opponent knows it's bad, and your opponent's likely going to ash this card if you play it as the first card. So keep that in mind. Then, as I mentioned earlier, I play 3 Crossout Designators so that we can deal with most of the extra hand traps that we aren't aware of. And the rest of it, the deck can play out itself, because it plays like a Sprite deck half the time. And then as for some backup plan that's really useful, Call by the Grave is very useful, not just in this particular matchup, but I guess it's really useful against Malice, because you can banish their stuff and their stuff does not come back out, which is also very nice. And also the talents are very useful to peek at your opponent's hand or draw more hand traps. Everything is about hand traps dumping on your opponent and then just controlling the board. And Triple Tactics Thrust, you can search for, well, talents and the like Bonfire if you really need one. But you can also apply it into your side deck. And finally, we have 1 Ryzeal Plasma Hole. So into the extra deck, we have 2 Duo Drives and 2 Detonators. So Duo Drive is your search 2, and it has to search 2, and it detaches 2 by effect. So if you get ogred, you lose the card. On top of that, this is also like your wallet for your Ryzeal Cross, because Ryzeal Cross needs to detach from a Ryzeal Xyz monster, and you don't want to lose your materials off of your detonator, so you'd rather get rid off of the Dual Drive. But Dual Drive's materials do give you an additional effect, which is plus 100 and minus 100 for each material you have under dual drive. So you gain 100 attack per material, your opponent loses 100 attack per material. So loading up isn't that bad. It can push your stats over a certain threshold. As for the detonator, it's a 3k beat stick by base, but it's essentially just Dryden with every single good material already attached to it. It protects your other Xyz monster from destruction once. That is something that you have to keep in mind. That is a once per turn effect to protect. But as for anything that's not once per turn, the destruction effect is not once per turn, so that part is going to essentially cause your opponent to misplay a lot, because the more that they chain onto their cards, the more detonator actually gets to destroy around it. So it's like a beehive. You poke at it once, you're like, oh, there's a couple of bees, but you poke at it some more, and then a whole swarm of stuff comes out. And speaking of stuff coming out, we have the Mirror Logic Aggregator that comes out of your extra deck and straight into the graveyard thanks to X Ryzeal. That gives your X Ryzeal a perfect opening play, which gives them the surge, and potentially if it's during your opponent's turn and they set up like a card on the field, you can use this as Chain Link 2 to kind of chain block the X Ryzeal from Ash. But this is a card that you're likely going to reattach onto Detonator, so that Detonator also kind of has like a built-in negate. You remember the days of Cash Tira at Ryzeal, and you just constantly attach like the craziest things under it? This is kind of the same deal. Then we have these four: Daguerreus, Starleash, Photon Blast Dragons, Abyss Dweller, and Excited Knight. Daguerreus, you use it for mainly two of the effects. I don't think you revive stuff out of the graveyard very often, but you can use it if you're in a bad situation and you don't have any names. And typically, the situation where you would bring up Daguerreus is because you normal summon a Furo Loss and you needed that to bring back one of the ones in the graveyard. So, you know what? Fine by me. But the other thing to note is that, of course, keep in mind of Elder Restriction. If you use the draw effect, get rid of the extra Furo Losses in your hand, or if you use the double attack effect, remember you might lose your battle phase, but usually you should be closing the game if you use that effect. And if you use a summon effect, you lose your main phase. So just be careful regarding Daguerreus the Timeless, but it is one of the most useful ones because it has the ability to detach without needing to affect your opponent. Then there's the Starleash Photon Blast Dragon. Kind of want to talk about that one in tandem with Detonator. When you go first, you probably won't need to start with this card. You'd rather just kind of play around hand traps for the most part. But when you go first, you probably want to start with a Detonator or a Photon Blast, just because there's too many things at target or whatnot. This is just there to help you protect Detonator. As long as your opponent starts chaining cards against you, you can either protect your duo drive or you can start destroying your opponent's board, creating that opening for yourself. And Photon Blast Dragon, any monster with 2,000 or more attack, they cannot be targeted or be destroyed by card effects, giving you just that Dragoon-esque protection, which is also pretty nice. And then there's Abyss Dweller. A Dweller is Dweller. If you know that your matchup is going to require a Dweller because they are grave-centric, then making Dweller as like one of your final summons is essential, because then you can just detach usually a node Ryzeal and then you revive it with Plug, and then you can still make your Detonator with a Dweller next to it, which makes that Detonator even crazier because there's no follow-up coming from your opponent. And Excited Knight, there to clear the board, essentially just there to clear the board. And against like Malice is like one of the funnier follow-ups after they kind of committed everything. And if you can get basically 4 summons, the first one probably should push into an Excited Knight just to clear the board. And then if you can revive Daguerreus, make a Daguerreus, revive your Artifact Lancia, and keep them under the lock, it's also pretty fun times at that point. Now, as for other monsters that we play, I am right now trying out, this is the flex ball, by the way. It's Galing Granite to search the Nibiru. It occasionally comes up. There's also Light Dragon Ignistra is the pop all, or rather monster pop. Number 41 Baguska. I've never made this card. You know how most people pivot from the shifter? You pivot into a Detonator. I have yet to use this, but I think it's still going to be very useful turning things into defense mode. We play 1 full armor Utopic Ray Lancer. This probably will get replaced in the future when we get ourselves access to, whatchamacallit, Twins of the Eclipse. So these are a bit of the other spots that you have that you don't really go into. And then we have Donner, Dagger for Hire. You have to play a Donner, because if you're given a token, you have to clear it, otherwise your X can't search. And that's why you have to play Donner. You can use it to clear the board, and luckily for us, Donner clears herself out as well. So, it makes the board nice and empty. But that's essentially the main deck and the extra deck. But before I jump into the combos, check out MST.TV. If you guys want fancy sleeves that look like this, and they're designed by me, well, check out MSTmerch.com, alright? So into the extra deck they go. All right, for combo 1A, we're gonna look at Ice Ryzeal, and combo 1B, we're gonna look at X Ryzeal. We're gonna do it much quicker because we're not gonna explain the steps. It's just so that you can get the flow of things. But for the first one, it's gonna be Ice Ryzeal. These are the Pyro Light 1-card combos, and here we go. So normal summon out the Ice Ryzeal, summon out the Sword Ryzeal if you don't have Sword Ryzeal in your hand. If you have Sword Ryzeal in your hand, summon an X Ryzeal. It's just giving you the additional names. The additional names are your extenders. So Sword Ryzeal on summon effect, get X Ryzeal because we're adding a Light Pyro. And with the Light Pyro, we're going to now lock ourselves into rank 4s by special summoning this, using it, and of course by using it we have to send a card into the graveyard. You can dump Mirror Logic Aggregator if you want to get the negate on your opponent's turn, or you can just dump a dual drive if you want to disrupt them with more hand traps. Dumping one of these is a little bit safer because when it comes to eating into like Nibiru plays, you can insulate yourself against that when you get the field spell. So we get to this particular point, we're going to activate X Ryzeal's effect and get ourselves a Node Ryzeal, a Fire Thunder monster. So that's summon number 3. Summon number 4, we're going to overlay now into the dual drive. Dual drive effect is going to attach the other dual drive into the graveyard. Be very clear when it comes to this particular effect so that your opponent doesn't accidentally ash you when you're not doing a search effect. And if you do that multiple times, you might get yourself disqualified. And so next we get to this particular point, we're going to detach 2, and if it gets disrupted, it's not really the end of the world if, say, this dual drive doesn't go through, because with the node in hand you can still make a detonator. But with the dual drive, ideally we're going to get our searches here. That's going to be cross and plug. Activate the cross right away because we attach the additional material. Now that this is here, there's going to be the additional material still stuck under the dual drive. And so when we special summon out our Node Ryzeal, this is right now super safe against most monster-based interruption. So we still have a plugin in our hand, and we're going to overlay these two. This one here is going to be dependent on matchup. If you have a graveyard-esque matchup, then the Abyss Dweller here is really good because you can detach the node and still revive the node with the plugin. But on the other hand, if you want to draw additional cards with more hand traps, you can go for Daenerys to get that additional draw and get rid of maybe the Furo losses that are stuck in your hand. And the other monster that you can go for in case you want to search for Nibiru, maybe you want to deal with Malice, then you go for Gallant Granite. As long as this particular monster is able to detach, it's fine. Or, alternatively, you have the ability to just straight up make a detonator. Now, this particular play isn't as strong and is not as like conservative with your hand because you're gonna basically have to reattach our Sword Ryzeal. You don't get the additional draw with the Ryzeal Cross, but this particular play lets you set the Ryzeal plugin. If you're worried about, say you saw Book of Eclipse, and Book of Eclipse can flip all your cards face down, then when your opponent activates like a Book of Eclipse, you can activate Detonator, destroy your own Detonator. Don't protect it, let this one flip face down, okay? And then you can just activate your own plug to summon back your Detonator, and based on the effective plug, you have to attach something from the deck, and this lets you attach, like, I don't know, the Plasma Hole. But on summon, Detonator is also going to attach a material, so it's going to reattach another one of your monsters, and hopefully go for the fire one so it doesn't get bestialed away. But essentially that turns on your Ryzeal Cross again and still provides you with one additional pop here. But this is something that I kind of want to note, is that if you have like a Mirror Logic Aggregator, then you'll still have 2 negates and you still have the destruction effect as well. So there's a lot that you can work with when it comes to this particular play. But if we were to actually just make a regular thing, let's go back. What we can do with this is that we can overlay these. Let's go into our number 60, Daenerys. Daenerys effect, detach 2. Draw 2 cards, right? And then, you know, get rid of an extra card. Then you can activate the Ryzeal plugin and special summon back Node. Node effect, dump the, send away the number 60, and summon back your, I don't know, X Ryzeal. And then overlay the 2 into a Detonator. Detonator effect attached to the Daenerys, activate Ryzeal Cross, and you can put back the duo drive and the plugin, and then you get to draw 1 additional card on top of that. So if you're trying to load yourself with hand traps, then this is probably the way to go, because now you have a ton of cards in your hand. You do have to skip your next draw phase, so you got to keep that in mind so that you don't like get yourself a game loss because you drew a card. So one copy of X Ryzeal essentially is the same thing. You just start a little bit differently. You got to special summon the X Ryzeal by sending like a detonator into the graveyard. X Ryzeal effect, you're going to add the Sword Ryzeal into hand. Special summon out the Sword Ryzeal. Sword Ryzeal is going to add Ice Ryzeal in this case. And Ice Ryzeal can now summon out the Node Ryzeal so that you're still going into the exact same stuff. Once you get to this particular point, you can just immediately just overlay this one into the Duo Drive effect, attach detonator. I think the rest of it kind of looks the same because you're just detaching two. The double search, activate the cross, normal summon out the Ice Ryzeal effect, summon out Node Ryzeal, and overlay these two. Same thing, you can go for, I don't know, let's go for Gallant Granite. This time we're adding a Nibiru. We're going to detach this, and we're going to add a Nibiru into our hand, play the plug, summon out our Node Ryzeal. We're going to send away the Gallant Granite, and so that we can summon back our X Ryzeal, overlay the two now into our, where are you, detonator effect, attach the Gallant Granite. You have multiple Ryzeals here, so you can use Ryzeal Cross, put back these two back into the deck, and draw one card. So essentially kind of the same thing. Alright, combo number 2 is just Sword Ryzeal. It's just another fundamental combo you need to know, because with Sword Ryzeal, without any Ryzeal on the field or in the graveyard, you have to normal summon this card, so it kind of eats your Ice Ryzeal summon. So we're going to do normal summon Sword Ryzeal, and we're going to add X Ryzeal to our hand. We're going to special summon out the X Ryzeal by sending into the graveyard. In this case, I really want that search, so I'm going to send a Mirror Logic Aggregator, and we're going to go Chainlink 1 X Ryzeal, Chainlink 2 Mirror Logic Aggregator, negating Sword Ryzeal, and resolving. Swords gets negated, and we get to add ourselves a Node Ryzeal. Since we have an Xyz monster in the graveyard, we're going to special summon out the Node Ryzeal now, and we're going to overlay with the Node Ryzeal. The reason why we're going for the Node Ryzeal here is so that we are trying to min-max the material that we are using, and we're going to go with the Duo Drive. If you feel like it's not very safe right now and you want to just push a different way, you could just make a format detonator if you want to, but we're just going to push through as if we're okay for now. We're going to activate the Duo Drive. That's going to detach two. This is going to add the plugin and the cross. And before we begin anything here, we're going to start by playing the cross, and then we're also just going to start with the plugin right away. We're going to revive back our node, but at the same time, because we want to nib proof ourselves, so we're going to attach onto this a plasma hole. This way we're really safe. In addition to this, one thing to know about plugin is that if they activate Nibiru and you don't have the material, you can just chain the plugin, and then you just put the material onto your monster, and then on the resolution of Nib, just detach the same thing you just put on. So this thing gives you perfect timing. Ridiculous. At this point, I mean, what we can do is we can send away one of our cards so that we can get additional summons. But in any case, this one still ends up giving us a detonator effect. We're going to attach the Mirror Logic Aggregator, and we're going to activate the Ryzeal Cross, put two cards back to the bottom of the deck, and then we're still going to be able to draw a card. So from here, because we didn't touch the other four cards, we look like this. Something along those lines. So combo number 3, we're going to look at Shifter. If we get Shifted right now, and I only have an X Ryzeal, some people might say, well, I guess you can't special summon an X Ryzeal anymore. And then they think on that, they dwell on it too long, and then they pass turn. Well, that's incorrect, because this card can be normal summoned. So you just normal summon an X Ryzeal. X Ryzeal gets Sword Ryzeal, special summon a Sword Ryzeal search, and we're going to get ourselves an Ice Ryzeal, and now you can make yourself a detonator. Right? Or even a Baguska. Okay, you can sit on this card all you want. Against Tenpai, you can drop this for sure. One of the easiest drops ever. Or, of course, the Detonator is also just, if not better, because you can protect yourself at least against one Raigeki, turn off the field spell, maybe take out some of the problem cards, but you have your follow-up with Ice Ryzeal. And every card that you destroy gets banished, so that's good news for you. One thing that does screw you over under Shifter is if you only have Sword Ryzeal. Because if you only have Sword, you can normal summon out the Sword, but the only options you can add are X and Ice. This one's special summon condition requires you to send a card from your hand or field to the graveyard. You cannot fulfill that. X Ryzeal special summon, you already know, it needs to send to the graveyard an extra deck monster. That's not happening. So this is the only one that really dies to Shifter alone, because if you open with X and Sword together, just normal summon out the X, special summon out the Sword, or even search the Sword. All the same. So the final combo here is to teach you to be adaptive, because if you have more names in your hand, essentially that just means that you have more materials to play with, because you don't need to necessarily search them out, and you can use their summon from hand effect as well. And the board that I'm going to try to end on this one is the Dragoon Protection board, where everything cannot be targeted, everything cannot be destroyed by card effect, which is great, especially when dealing with a Tenpai. So we're going to normal summon Ice Ryzeal effect, and this one does not play around Nib as much, okay? So with the Ice Ryzeal effect, remember, you don't always have to go into Sword. If you already have Sword, you can go for the X effect. That's going to give us the node into our hand. Alright, that's pretty good. Next, we can just give ourselves a little bit of protection. We don't have to use our extra monster zone 9 times out of 10, but if you want it to be safe, go ahead, put your monster up there. And the monster we're going to be going into depends on what you really want. If you want to protect everything from destruction and your opponent has built a board already, then go for Detonator. You, like 9 times out of 10, that's not going to be wrong, because you're going to be able to clear stuff as you go, and you're going to be able to push up the remaining monster you have. This particular hand can already generate an additional, basically 2 cards just from this alone. You can probably put another Xyz and another Xyz right from this alone. So let's say I want to go for the protection and anti, like, oh, you've seen the Imperms, you've seen the Veilers, you've seen the Ghost Mourner, then you go for the Starliege Photon Blast Dragon. And if they negate this, then you kind of know that they have more hand traps, but if they don't negate it, then they're in for a really tough surprise, because we're going to summon out the Node Ryzeal. That re-enables the Sword Ryzeal, because we have nothing in the graveyard at the moment. Sword Ryzeal effect is going to get the X Ryzeal into our hand, and now we can actually special summon the X Ryzeal right now if we want to, but I am going to yeah, you know what, let's just do that right now. We're gonna go for X Ryzeal. We're not playing around Nibiru for this particular play. We're gonna put the Myriologic Aggregator. We already searched with X Ryzeal when we summoned it out from Ice, so from here, take the 2 here, we get the Sword and the X. This is gonna go into our Dual Drive. But the dual drive here is 27, but also protected from targeting and destruction thanks to the Starliege Photon Blast Dragon. So we can activate the dual drive effect, and we're not detaching from here. We're detaching from the Photon Blast Dragon. We're going to take both of them out, and we're going to use that to add the cross and plug-in. So the moment you activate the cross, this has 2 material that's immediately live, and you can also activate the plug-in, and you can just take one of these materials. Let's go for the X again. And you get to attach another material onto the dual drive, manipulating the attack stat even further. We're going to put a plasma hole here. And that provides you with the additional body as well. Now you can overlay these 2 into the detonator. With the detonator in play, we're going to activate the detonator, get the Myriologic Aggregator attached. You can use Ryzeal Cross, put back your 2 monsters, and you can draw a card. You can pivot around this as much as you want, because you still technically had the Node Ryzeal that could have used the effect. If this got negated, you could probably just send it away if it was a problematic card. Or if your opponent gave you a card, Node Ryzeal was going to be the answer to just send it away to revive another Ryzeal. So just understand how you can pivot around this. But this is essentially the board where this is protecting everything. And yeah, this is really annoying. But ultimately, we're just trying to teach you that, hey, you can pivot the combos as much as you want, because this deck is really just that flexible. And it's not like Malice where you can kind of follow a flow chart of things. This one you should be adapting to the boards and the matchups that you're playing against. That's it for this video, guys. Hopefully you learned a thing or two aside from just combo, but maybe the thought process behind those combos and what you should be thinking about when you proceed into those matchups. And I think that if you were able to take that away from this video, then good for you. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Hit that thumbs up and hit subscribe, ding that notification bell. If you guys have any suggestions for the deck or maybe how the format will adapt, leave it down in the comment section. Love to hear your thoughts, and maybe it will improve my build even further. I mean, the format just started after all, so it can only go up from here, right? And that's all I got for this one, so I'll see you all in the next one.